Hi, friends. I'm Amy Julia Becker, and this is Love is Stronger Than Fear, a podcast about pursuing hope and healing in the midst of social division. In this season, we're talking about how we can respond to the brokenness in our lives and in our society with our heads, hearts, and hands. You can check out my ebook, Head, Heart, Hands, on my website, amyjuliabecker.com, if you want a framework for these conversations. In today's episode, I get to talk with Erin Leaverton, and we're talking about a really countercultural and unexpected decision that she and her husband Dave made to sell their house and load their 3 young kids into an RV and travel around the country for a year so that they could try to begin understanding what divides us and what it might look like to heal those divides. The Leavertons are also featured in a new documentary called The Reunited States. That documentary is streaming now on Amazon, on demand, on other platforms. I will repeat this at the end, but you can find out more about the film at reunitedstates.tv, and I highly recommend it. But for now, I'll let you listen in on my conversation with Erin Leaverton. Well, hello. My guest today is Erin Leaverton. Erin is someone that I've wanted to have on this show for a long time, and she just has given me a perfect excuse because she and her family are featured in a new documentary film that has just released and is called The Reunited States. Erin, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to try and give a little bit of our backstory. We got to meet you and your family when you and your husband Dave and your 3 children, young children, were driving around the country in a very large RV to all 50 states on a quest to try to understand, I think initially try to understand our political divisions. And I'd love to just start by asking you to tell our listeners what prompted the decision, how you approached that year on the road. Just tell us that story.
Well, I think the best place to start with that story is with our daughter, Grace. She was born with Down syndrome. She's our oldest, and you know this story well, but yeah. I was very I had my ducks in a row before Grace came into my life, and she came in like a wrecking ball and messed me up in the best way. And all the things that I thought mattered stopped mattering as much, and all the things that I didn't know did matter started to matter to me. And so she gave us, I think, the freedom to begin to dream outside the box, because it's kind of the way that she's designed. She's just out of the box kind of person. She's got an extra chromosome. She's fearless. She makes me uncomfortable with the way that she operates. And yet in that, she sets me free.
Yeah.
And so it was Grace, I think, who was the ultimate catalyst, who kind of took us on a journey of getting to know the heart of God. And getting to know what living life is really about. And it's not about sort of checking these success boxes. It's about finding out what you were made for and doing that thing with joy and with, I think, surrender. And so that brought us to our dinner table in 2016 during the presidential election. And my husband's background is in partisan politics. He was a Republican political operative for over a decade. And worked in that world to sow seeds of division, because that's what wins elections.
Yeah.
And basically, after a decade or a little over a decade of that, he left that world very sort of disenchanted and sort of disgruntled, realizing that it was causing harm to people and to relationships. And so about 6 years after he left politics, we were sitting in our kitchen watching what was unfolding on the TV, on the news across the country, where people were moving out of disagreement and into violence and hate. And it felt like we were watching something from one of these countries where the government is like falling apart.
Right.
And it was so disheartening for my husband, because I think in that moment he was like, I helped cause this.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at him, and it was one of those moments where a question came out of my mouth, and I can't tell you exactly where it came from. It was like one of those deep sort of moments of just revelation. And I just looked at him and I said, hey, if we didn't have kids or a mortgage, what would you wake up and want to do tomorrow? And he looked at me without blinking, and he said, I would want to do something to bring healing and unity to our country. And I looked at him, I was like, what? That's like a beauty pageant answer. Like, But something really shifted in our hearts when he spoke out, sort of, I guess, not to get too flowery with this, but like it was like he was speaking out his destiny. Like something just fell into alignment. And from that moment forward, nothing was ever the same. The next day, he's on his way to work. There's this story on NPR about this book called The Reunited States by a guy named Mark Gerzon. Mark ends up meeting with Dave that day.
No way.
Coffee. They end up crying and like fist bumping and like hugging. And it was sort of a nudge, I think, from God saying, you're on the right track. Like, you're not crazy. And so from that conversation, our nights turned into sort of like a war room of learning and reading and researching, like, what is the root cause of our division? Why are we coming apart? And there was no consensus. I mean, it was all over the map. It was, everybody thinks they have the answer. And we just instinctively sort of knew, like, we cannot solve a problem we don't understand. And so after a lot of prayer, a lot of fasting, we came to the conclusion that the only way to learn about division is to go out across the country and ask people.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So we really felt prompted. Sell your house, quit your jobs, put the equity into an RV, and go learn about division. Like, our financial advisor was thrilled.
I bet.
And our parents and our friends, they're like, are you crazy?
It's a really popular decision.
No, it's not a popular decision. But, I think that's the beauty that we have, the beauty of what Grace gave us. She gave us the courage to do something that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
Our financial advisor was obviously not for this, but it was the best thing for us. It saved us.
So tell me, just like, let's do some nitty gritty. How old were your kids when you started your trip?
Yeah. So William was 2. He was in diapers and had a passy. So we moved him out of his crib onto a pull-out couch on the RV. Mary Catherine was 5 and Grace was 6. And so they were compact enough to fit into these little microscopic bunk beds that were on our RV. I mean, now they wouldn't fit.
Right.
It was the perfect moment when they were sort of in this kindergarten moment of life when we had the bandwidth to say, okay, we'll road school these kids.
Yeah.
And we'll learn together as a family about our country. So that's what we did.
And then how did you map it out and have a plan? Like, we're going to do this state and then this one, and we'll just make some contacts along the way.
There was a guy who created a program where you could jump on this route anywhere in the country and do his was to go to all 50 capitals. Okay. And so we took his plan and sort of tweaked it because our goal wasn't to go to the capitals. It was to go to the regions or cities in each state that are the most broken and divided. Okay. So that was sort of the loose plan. And where we started had to do with the weather. So we started in January of 2018 and knew we needed to stay pretty far south in RV. And by the time we made it up to you guys, it was the spring.
Right. Yes, I remember. How did you go about saying, here's the place where there's division in each state? Like, how'd you determine that or discern that?
Yeah, so we were the education crew. We were the advanced team.
Right.
We're the podcasters and the bloggers, and Dave, it was all hands on deck. And so at night we would just dive into news stories and podcasts. Like we would literally dig up anything we could find and start just cold calling and reaching out to people. And, even if you feel like your network is big when you're just a private citizen, everyone is pretty homogenous in our tribe. Right. So if you're trying to learn about division, the only people we knew were like white Republicans. So it was not helpful in a lot of ways to network, but that still opened a lot of doors to meet with people. And I really felt like the Lord led us to the gatekeepers in each place. And when I say gatekeepers, I'm talking about the people who sort of hold the gate to the story of why that place is broken. And those were very rarely like the mayor of a city.
Yeah.
It was usually someone hidden, like an Uber driver or someone who cuts hair.
Do you
Or
have any like examples that come to mind?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, tell us a story.
Okay, so we roll into Charlotte, North Carolina, which is, in many ways the banking capital
Right.
of America.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the most gentrified cities in America,
Mm-hmm.
and most quickly gentrified, like overnight. It's a really fascinating study on gentrification. So we pulled in, and Dave was taking a course on the history of racism in America, but it was like a 45-minute drive away, and we had one car. And so he ended up Ubering back and forth. And his Uber ride on the way back from the first day ended up being this Black woman named Leah. And over the course of this 45-minute car ride, the two of them just, became instant best friends.
Mm.
So I ended up spending the whole week with her. Mm-hmm. Essentially. And she, as an Uber driver, also has a law degree and has done all this work in New Orleans with the people who were displaced after Katrina. And she was just an incredible human being. Mm-hmm. And we hit the jackpot with that Uber ride because she taught us this intricate hidden history of this city we never could have learned from anyone else. And at the end of it, and she took us to see Black Panther that week, which had come out in theaters. So that was one of the richest experiences. And, you can't orchestrate this. You could never plan that out.
Right.
And she's a dear friend who I really go to still to this day for advice and thoughts and feedback, because again, like if our worlds are isolated and insulated, then we're not getting these other perspectives, and we have blind spots. And so it's great to have people who we trust and who trust us with their story enough to go in and say, so tell me how this is hitting you right now, like an attack on our capital, or
right,
whatever it is that's happening in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I want to pivot. I know we could just keep talking about your trip, which we will. We'll come back to that. But I want to talk a little bit about the film, which I have had the chance to watch. And I really appreciated it. I've already recommended it to multiple people for screenings. And I am so glad that it was made. I'd love for you to just give kind of a bird's eye view of what the film is, because it's not just tracing the two of you or the five of you as you travel across the country, but can you explain who it is, how it came to be, who it profiles, what it's about?
Yeah. And I'm so thankful for that, because it's a beautiful film in which the director, Ben Recchi, really weaves together several narratives of different people who are playing their part in bringing us together across our differences and healing our divides. The film was birthed out of a talk that Susan Bro gave that Ben actually got to hear. Susan Bro is the mother of Heather Heyer, who was killed in Charlottesville in 2017. And Susan's story really sort of anchors, I think, the entire film, in the sense that there's and you can weigh in on this because I would love to hear your thoughts, but there's something about motherhood that sort of supersedes difference. And it cuts across all the barriers. Right. It was actually stories of mothers that gave me this on-ramp to connection and empathy in almost every place that we went. And so Susan's story sort of collides with our story. Right. And Ben found out about us while we were traveling from our friend Mark Gerzon, who wrote the book, The Reunited States.
So that was you were not planning as you set out to, like, the film wasn't already in the works, at least it wasn't already knowing that you'd be a part of it. Wow.
We had filmed a little bit at the beginning, thinking, I wonder if we could do like a Kickstarter and, do a film and kind of share what we're learning with the world. Sure. And the Kickstarter failed. And so we just kind of went on our way and had a pile of footage, and we didn't know what to do with it. And then Ben picked up around state number 25 and literally got on a plane the next day. Like, we had a phone call and he got on the plane And the next day we were filming, and it was really neat because Ben wasn't looking for an angle. He just wanted to follow and see what happens and let the story tell itself, which I think takes a lot of humility as a filmmaker. And it took a lot of, I think, trust on our part to let him into our world, because it was a lot of tender, intimate moments.
Well, and right, you're processing as you go. I mean, which is part of what you get to see as a viewer, but there's also some sense of, you know, if you had made a film afterwards, then you could curate the story a little bit more, or
you could be less vulnerable. You could be more preachy, like, oh, here's what I learned.
Right.
But when you're in the middle of it, it's just a hot mess, you know. And it was a hot mess. I'm not gonna lie. But then the other two narratives are an amazing guy named Stephen Olikara, who is his parents. So he's a first generation American, and he has brought so much cohesion to young legislators across the country and state legislatures across the country through his Millennial Action Project. Mm-hmm. And then Greg Orman is the other narrative, and he is an independent candidate who ran for governor of Kansas and lost. But he has a really powerful argument as to why we need a third force in our politics. So they're all amazing people, amazing stories.
Yeah, and it's blended together really, really beautifully. But I agree that Susan's story as a mother who lost her daughter, but who's also really clear that if her daughter had not been a white woman who was killed, that Susan would not have the same public platform that she does. And she's used it well and held it well, but really humbly. And I mean, so much of that footage is just so poignant. And you're right. It's just so very, very real. Well, I want to talk about, there's, I think, a point in the film where you say that when you started out, you thought our divisions were rooted in politics, and that over the course of your travels began to believe they were symptomatic of something deeper. And so I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what you learned about divisions and what those deeper divisions are about, and how that your understanding of divisions changed as you traveled.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we started out with a hypothesis, and I think it's okay because you have to start somewhere. And our experience was politics. And so the assumption was, if we can just bring Republicans and Democrats together over dinner, they will suddenly magically see one another as human beings. And by the time we have dessert, we will have solved our division. Voila. And, you know, this is I think tells of the fact that we live in a dominant culture where things have worked well for us. And so division feels like a small thing when you haven't been at the brunt of that, so to speak. When we sat down with the people, the gatekeepers we started to meet with, we immediately began to hear a completely different narrative. I mean, no one was talking about politics. No one wanted to discuss abortion or gun control. I mean, these people were crying out with a story that reaches down into the depths of who we are as a nation, all the way back to the very beginning and before the beginning. I mean, we're talking when this land there was not a single white European set foot here. It was a place, it's a story that we don't really know fully. And so what we began to learn and discover through just listening to people's stories is that our divisions are rooted in a belief system that we have about human value. And I'll unpack that for you.
Yeah,
or do you want me to stop? Okay.
No, I would love, yes, I would love, my other question for you had to do with humanity and value. So yes, please keep going. Yeah.
So what we discovered is that, you know, and it was kind of like an onion, and we were peeling back layers, and we would see, you know, okay, here's a city that's divided. Like, let's take Louisville. So Louisville has a really hard line of demarcation. It's called the 9th Street Divide. And they've done studies on this, and it was a line separating that was used as a redlining tool. to separate the white part of town from the black part of town. Today, there is a difference in life expectancy from one side of that road to the other of 15 years.
Wow.
So we're looking at the long-lasting effects of things like this. And, just because it happened and we decided, oh, well, now black people can cross the line, or white people, it doesn't change the lasting impact of these decisions. And so our big question as we went from place to place is, how did it get this way? And the first layer that we hit was race. But then as we began to dig deeper, we realized that's not the root cause of our division. Which was really frustrating, because you think you've landed on it and then it kind of slides out from under you and you realize, no, it goes deeper than this. And what we began to discover as we listened to more and more people is that this is actually rooted in our belief in a false hierarchy of human value. And there's a whole lot of like bullet points on that hierarchy: socioeconomic status, education, skin color, religion, sexual orientation. Like these are all sort of marks that are either going to work for you or work against you in how valuable your life is. And the flaw in this entire scheme is that any life could be measured in value. You can't measure human life. It's infinite. It's there's no, but we do it every day in our subconscious.
Well, and to think that the value comes from society, rather than that. So first of all, any idea of measuring a human life, especially as one being more valuable than another, is false. But also the idea that where we find our value is from what other people or our society as a whole decides to give us, as opposed to the value being implicit and bestowed upon us by God, really.
Yeah. Well, and I think this taps into the reality of image bearing. I mean, we bear the image of an eternal God. That's incredible.
And we don't each of us.
That. Yeah, each of us. And it's infinitely beautiful and it's infinitely valuable, and we're not finding that in each other. We're not seeing that in each other. And what you just said hits the nail on the head. The things that I will look for to define my own value is the exact same set of principles I'll apply on every other person, which is why Grace wrecked my life, because she messed up my list of principles of what gave me value ultimately. And so we all have this working in us. And I think this is part of why I don't like this idea of influencers and sort of people in the world who are untouchable or just up here on this pedestal, because it reinforces this lie and this idea. We don't need influencers. We need leaders. We need mothers and fathers. We need people who are willing to get down and roll up their sleeves and be in relationship. That's how we, I think, heal as a country. And so there's a whole lot. I mean, there's so many different facets we could go dive into on this, but ultimately, the biggest thing that I discovered is that the thing that fuels this false hierarchy is our belief in it. Yeah. And if we stop believing in it, it could go away.
And this is skipping ahead a little bit, but I'm curious whether you've had ideas about what it would take to stop believing in it and to believe something different, but also that the going away or the dismantling.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about it so much. And, Dave and I have referred to it as we need human value herd immunity, kind of like the coronavirus, like there's a tipping point, right?
Right. At which point enough people believe this that it actually changes things. I actually wrote a little Instagram post or something about love and herd immunity. Like if we had enough people who were living out of an ethos of love and of common humanity and all the things we're talking about, that it would be like herd immunity. You don't actually need everybody, but you do need a big portion of the population to be, bringing the both protection and care into the society in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I think what it ultimately boils down to is a decision that we each have to make on why we matter, like why our life can't be measured. And believing that not just theoretically or cerebrally, but understanding that in the depths of us, which I think is part of what the love of Jesus does in setting us free. Like Jesus didn't come to give us life. He came to give us abundant life. And I think that is marked by fearlessness in knowing that you are loved. That no outside factor could change that. You know, how many likes you have, or even what you did well or what you didn't do well. You know, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about performance,
Right.
and the hamster wheel of just getting out there and wowing people. That builds in us a false identity of why we matter. And then we impose that on other people without even knowing it. And so this is something I'm not yet free from. It's something I'm working out. I'm working out my salvation with fear and trembling. And, you know, I think there's probably a lot of keys hidden in scripture to go and hunt down, like treasure to find on how we do this. But like you said earlier, I don't think this is something we do as an island. I think this is something we do together. And I believe it's something that we as mothers could do together, because if we discover the infinite nature of our value as mothers, then we will automatically pour that out on our children. And in one generation, this could change.
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious, obviously you've done a ton of reflection and there has been a lot of change in your life in the past 5 years, if we want to put a time frame on it. And I'm wondering, if you look back at yourself, you know, before that 2016 dinner conversation, how do you feel now about what you didn't know then?
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's like such an intense question.
I know.
I've gone through moments of really hating my former self. And I went through a period in which I actually suffered from a form of post-traumatic stress called PITS, which is perpetrator-induced traumatic stress, which is basically me associating myself as a white Anglo-Saxon, you know, female with the perpetrators of great violence in our history.
Yeah.
Especially violence sort of driven at the helm of the church, and just being utterly crushed and devastated to find that narrative over and over, and hoping that that would be the last one, and then finding it again, and realizing that we as the church, as the American church, have a lot of reckoning to do. And this isn't about shaming the church. This is about healing us and setting us free. And that's something I want to touch on. I don't think, after I went through this whole period of PITS, and actually it was a Native American friend of ours who helped me identify that. I was having nightmares. I wasn't sleeping. I was having trouble, like, digesting food. It was getting it was manifesting in my body. And he said, "You're suffering from PITS." And he said, "Listen, anger is like a hallway that you need to pass through. Nobody sits in a hallway, and you have to go through it, but don't sit down in it. It's taking you somewhere." And that actually key for me, like those words helped me so much, because I think we do have permission to mourn the things that we discover, and we need to. I think that's healthy, but we can't stay there.
Yeah.
And we have to move through it. And I think that's true for anger with yourself. And I think it's also true for, you know, if you've been victimized. Like, it's not good to stay under this victim mentality. You got to move through it. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck. And believe that we all collectively as the church need to go through that process. And the people who took me on that journey were gracious enough to not shame me. They held me accountable. And accountability is about calling you higher, not keeping you down. And I've heard a lot of people call for accountability in recent days over what happened at the Capitol. And I don't know that we mean the same thing when we say accountability. I think the word accountability is often sort of like a word people hide behind to say shame on you. But shame will not produce change in people's hearts.
Right.
In fact, it says in scripture, it's kindness that leads us to repentance.
Yeah.
So people were kind enough and patient enough with me to walk with me through this learning process and give me permission to be where I was in learning it, mourn it, and then discover what I can do about healing it. So yeah, I actually forgot what the original question was.
Just how you feel about yourself when you look back to who you were 5 years ago.
To answer your question, I have a lot of compassion for myself.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. And shaming people for not knowing something will never produce transformation in their hearts.
My husband Peter and I talk a lot about this because we're in a somewhat similar space of having, as almost middle-aged white people, really begun to reckon with what it means to be privileged white people. And having a lot of people in our circles who haven't even done some of the reading and thinking and praying and working it out that we've done. And there can be such a impetus to judge, to shame, to point fingers, all that you said. And Peter keeps saying, with beginners, you begin at the beginning, which sounds, it's such an obvious statement. And yet there is a sense of wanting people to accelerate to step number 72 when they're on step 1, and you can't manufacture that, but people can take the next step. And I give myself comfort in that, in terms of yes, I'm still learning and growing, and what's the next small step. But also when I look back at other people who are like me, and I'm wanting to rush them along, to be able to similarly say, with compassion, begin at the beginning and take one small step, and you'll be amazed at actually where you end up, one small step at a time.
Absolutely.
I have a couple more questions, just in terms of that sense of growth and transformation for you. One is, you mention at the end of the film the 2016 election, and how your view of politics has changed. So I'm curious if you can just talk about what went into the decision that you made in terms of voting in the 2016 election, and how has your approach to political decisions changed over the course of these past few years?
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. So the film, Ben, of course, threw me under the bus and put into the film who I voted for in the 2016 election, which I was like, thanks a lot, buddy. But, no, I made that decision out of fear, which I think a lot of people voted out of fear, or vote all the time out of fear. You're not voting for anything, you're voting against something. And
so will you speak a little bit to that, going back to 2016? What were you afraid of? What were you voting against?
In 2016, I think I was voting against all the things that I was hearing would happen to me and my family and our country if the Democrats won that election. This is the narrative. This is the age-old narrative. They're going to take away your guns. They're going to take away all your rights. Not that I have a gun, but
somehow that felt scary.
I don't go out and do things, but it's just the fear mongering that drives this wedge into your heart. And so you're not for anything. You're just against something. And that was really, I think, what compelled me to vote the way I did in that election. And then, of course, fast forward to 2018 and traveling and learning and realizing that, being paralyzed by fear is never going to be the way we can move this country forward. Scaring people into voting a certain way, that's really unhealthy. Right. You think about a relationship, like a marriage. If you're making decisions in your marriage out of fear of what could happen, it's just unhealthy. It's a really bad way to live life. It's actually bad for your body and your mind and your soul. So, I think a lot of people have said, so are you guys Democrats now? Right. And the thing is, I really have moved away from this idea that any person could be summed up by a political party. We are human beings. We are multifaceted reflections of the image of an infinite God. And so Dave and I have both sort of moved out of the realm of right or left or even centrist. This isn't about losing who you are and moving somewhere towards the middle where you're just vanilla. This is about whether or not you are willing to come to the table with your full self and an open heart.
Yeah.
I think the conversation needs to shift out of right, left into open-hearted or closed-hearted.
Hmm.
Because if we get stuck between these two binary options of right or left, then we're never going to see the beauty in one another. And I think the business world has really grabbed a hold of the fact that diverse teams make the best decisions.
Right.
You think about companies like CEOs who succeed, who have incredible track records, surround themselves in their boardrooms with dissenters, with people who have a different opinion or a different perspective. And that really leads to the best business decisions. We have not picked up on that as a society.
Right.
And we're afraid of anyone who disagrees with us. And the problem with that is our differences, and you'll appreciate this as a mom of Penny.
Yeah.
Our differences are our power source.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes us magnificent. And differences don't have to divide us. They can bring us together into this beautiful, broad space of creative thinking and problem solving. And we're not there yet, but that's the vision that I have, is that you don't need to lay down your political views to be friends with me, to have a conversation about how you feel about things, because love has, Dr. King said, love is the most durable power in the world. And when I heard that quote, what I literally saw was like an actual structure that could hold the weight of disagreement. And I think agreement is what we're building on right now. And it's so cheap and so flimsy, it cannot hold any dissonance. Whereas love can.
I have so many things that I want to say in response. Because I'm so on board. I've got a quotation from Bishop Michael Curry, literally posted note on my window in front of me. I'm going to read it. He said, "Love is not a sentiment. It is a commitment our democracy may well hang upon." And I think that just speaks to what you're talking about and I'm honestly, the name of this podcast, Love is Stronger Than Fear, yes, came out of an essay I wrote right the week after the 2016 election, because I similarly saw fear on both sides. I had Trump supporting friends and Clinton supporting friends, and the reaction on both sides was so much fear of the other side, as opposed to real commitment and love to whatever principles they were about, as well as an ability to love across those divisions and commitments, even though I really do think that we can do that, especially as we discover that common humanity that can, as you're saying, it doesn't make us all the same. It doesn't mean we don't see difference. What it means is it allows us to actually celebrate that diversity, because there's a freedom in it, in recognizing I have needs that only people who are different from me will be able to fill, and vice versa. There's I mean, it can obviously sound really Pollyanna-ish, but I do think there's a beautiful vision of mutuality that can emerge if we are really digging down into and trusting. I love your idea of love as a container, like that it is able to bear the weight of all of it.
Yes.
I've two more things I want to try to just squeeze into our time together. And the first one is just to ask what have been the costs and the gains of making this change? Because it's not just that it is. You sold your house. You guys moved and, broke ties with friends, family, whoever, at least in a physical way in terms of leaving. But I'm just curious, what does it cost you in whatever way you want to see that or answer that? And then also what have you gained?
Well, I can sum it up really quickly for you. I lost everything, and except my family, and I gained everything. I mean, Jesus said you have to lose your life to find it. And that's unwittingly, unintentionally, that I stumbled into that, I had no idea that I was actually losing my life, but I lost all the things that I didn't realize were giving me value. I didn't know when we left Dallas that people living on RVs are considered, according to the national housing, whatever, as homeless, which really wrecked me when I found that out. I was like, oh my gosh. But, these sort of stigma we attach to our own value completely unknowingly. It's completely in our subconscious. And God loves me enough to push me out of that safety boat and all the things that I thought I needed to sort of keep me, like, what does the safe even mean? Right.
Yeah.
And so I lost everything that I didn't know was defining me.
Mm-hmm.
All these other things that I was missing came swooping in and showed me what my life is really made for, and what I'm what I want to live my life to do, which is to serve in any way I can to help bring people back to this place of our what I call our sacred interconnectedness.
Mm.
That I'm in you and you're in me, and no matter how much I yell and scream at you, I can never change the reality that we are one.
Mm-hmm.
And this was Jesus' prayer, that we would be one as he and the Father and Holy Spirit are one.
Yeah.
And that is what I've now committed my life to at great cost. And it's worth it.
Right. Right. Well, just as we come to a close, I think it was Stephen, the head of the Millennial Action Project, who said, but it might not have been him. I'm not sure. It's also actually the very, very intro to the film when Van Jones does a little clip just to introduce it. It might have been in that scene. I can't remember who said this, but somebody said, ours is a government of the people. And what that means is that change starts with us. And I was kind of haunted, like I found by that line, because I was like, that's a little bit scary, but it's also really empowering and hopeful. This thought that, yes, we do elect people, but we are the ones who are doing that work. Like, and it's not just in terms of our political system and our elections, but in terms of just like how we are living and what we are caring about and where we're putting our time and money and attention day in and day out. And so I would love to end just by asking on a, nitty gritty or pragmatic level, like how you now are participating in the change that starts with us, and whether you have any advice for other people who are in that place of like, I want to take the next small step towards unity, towards, love, all of these things we've been talking about.
Well, I think we can start with our words. It's so simple, but what we say, what we tweet, what we share, how we go about addressing people who we might disagree with, how we talk about them in front of our kids. These are these little sort of microscopic day-to-day decisions that lumped all together make up a life. And I want my life to be marked by love and honor for my fellow human beings, even the ones who I vehemently disagree with. No one is beneath deserving honor. And honor and respect are two different things. Respect is earned over time. Sorry, my dog's barking. But honor is something we can give freely, just like love. And everyone is deserving of honor because everyone bears God's image.
Right.
And even if they're, committing atrocities, and I know that this is hard. This is a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to believe. But even in the act of committing horrible atrocities, no human being is outside the realm of redemption and honor. And I think if we can start there and just say that out loud,
right?
Maybe just say it until you start to believe it.
Well, and even I'm thinking about the pray for your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, right? Like anyone who I am tempted to call these people or those people, anyone I'm tempted to put into some sort of oppositional group that I just have nothing in common with. It's like, okay, what would it mean to love, honor, pray for, conceive of them as your common image bearer?
I actually, this is crazy. I wrote a poem this morning, which is, I haven't written a poem in like 10 years, but do you mind if I share it with you?
Not at all.
The podcast, then don't, but it just speaks to this exact point. It's called Swords into Plowshares. What are our weapons of warfare? Our words. Our freedom to speak has morphed into a license to kill. As we strip our fellow countrymen of the dignity inherent to their existence, we use our words to fight, to incite, to tear down. We use our words to wound, to attack, to maim, and to shame. No longer are our disagreements the vast places where we meet to explore and expand. Our hearts are closed, our minds made up. You have no beauty or brilliance. You have nothing to teach me. Your pain means nothing. Your story has no worth. You are dead to me. The problem with this assessment is that no man can be dead to me. no matter what he's done, because if he is dead, then so am I. We are linked, woven together, inextricably tied. We are one. My life is wrapped up in his and his in mine. To say his story has no worth, to say he is dead, is to say the same of myself. When I use my words to destroy my enemy, they work as a slingshot coming back to destroy none other than me. Bless your enemies. Pray for those who hurt you. This is the slingshot of abundant life, of the better tree. The beloved community stands before us, beckoning us higher to find the better way. This is the love that believes all things, that hopes all things. This is the love that never fails. It is not beyond our reach. It is not outside our door. It is here, staring back at us in the face of the one we've decided to destroy. It is here, this love, this insane idea that I can love my neighbor as I love myself, not because he matters, but because he matters to me. We are at a crossroads. It is time to make a choice. We'll use our words to liberate or use them to destroy. We have two paths before us. One is easy, one is hard, but to beat these weapons into plowshares is the best idea I've heard. You see, we were made for each other, me for you and you for me. Your story is my story. So without you, I'm incomplete. We've built a nation on shards of pain, generations of suffering, generations to blame. The road ahead is filled with the stories that led us to today. Everyone a vital piece to the puzzle that we've made. So if you want the path ahead to lead to brighter days, we can't take one more step until we look at the mistakes we've made, not to shame us or to harm us or to bring us to our knees, but to show us and to grow us and to heal us of this disease. Fear has been the fuel that forged these weapons we still use, but love can break them down to plowshares, use them in ways we never knew. So let us sit together in that vast expanse of love and light. Let me hear your story and learn to listen instead of fight. There's so much living yet to do, so much good to be done. Let's choose the path of freedom where our words become the plowshares that feed us and make us one. And every chain of the past can finally be broken. Every curse turned into praise of the beauty of the majesty of my brothers on display. Our differences are a gift meant to forge us to something new. They shape us in the fire to form the best me, the best you. Fear will only rob me of the beauty that's within, but love can give me eyes to see that being different is how we win. So as we stand in silence, staring at these paths ahead, I confess with all my heart that I'm in you, you're in me. Let us be one as we were always meant to be.
There's a lot in there that relates
There's a lot
to
in there.
what we've just been talking about. No, I just, the slingshot of love, something like that, in the, like towards the end there, and the beloved community. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
It just struck me. I was like, this is so deeply on my heart that I'm writing poetry about it. And I'm not even really into poetry, but that verse about beating our swords into plowshares is exactly, I believe that verse in this hour is talking about our words.
Right. What we use to cut one another down instead can be transformed into what we use to plow together, like to actually create something that is sustaining and nurturing.
Grow food that feeds us.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Well, Erin, thank you. Thank you so much for your time, but also just for your willingness to tell your story in multiple forms here on this podcast, but also in the film. And I do want to just make sure that our listeners know how to find out more about you. So will you just give a little plug for your website and so forth?
Sure. So our nonprofit is undividednation.us. And then I'm blogging at erinleaverton.com. And we're just, we're happy to serve in any way we can. We're working on a couple of projects to try and put tools in people's hands. And I'm working on a book about motherhood. And I think motherhood is one avenue that we can pursue to bring healing to our country. So
awesome. Well, when that book comes out, we'll have to officially talk in a recorded way again, but hopefully you and I will get to talk in between. So thank you again for
having me. Time. So much fun.
Thanks so much for listening to Love is Stronger Than Fear. I do, again, want to encourage you to take the time to check out The Reunited States. It's a film. Reunitedstates.tv is the website for the film, but you can go there, stream it on Amazon. On that website, reunitedstates.tv, there are resources for having bridge building conversations, and I would love for you to check those things out as someone who cares about participating in healing in our country. I'd also love for you to share this episode, subscribe to this podcast, and of course, just give it a rating, give it a review wherever you find your podcasts so that even more people can benefit from these conversations. I always want to thank our co-host, Breaking Ground, my editor, Jake Hansen, Amber Beery, my social media coordinator, and all of you, our wonderful listeners. As you go into your day today, I hope you will carry with you the peace that comes from believing that love is stronger than fear.